From the capital city, Sacramento, California, you're listening to one of the newest sports media sensations, the Sports Super Genius Podcast. Want to hear your opinions on air or on his blog? Email George at thesportsupergenius.com. Now from the private studio of thesportsupergenius.com, here is the Sports Super Genius.
Super Genius.
Welcome to another episode of the Sports Super Genius Sports Minute. My name is George. Right now I'm currently in Omaha, Nebraska, but let me stay on topic. I wanted to talk about durability in baseball. As of right now, Randy Johnson just hit his 300th win. My last transmission I had was I talked about Randy Johnson going for number 300. The game got rained out. He won it the next night. But, when you look at the list of the 300 game winners, people are talking about the steroid era in baseball and who is on it and who isn't. But when you look at that list, there's roughly about 19 players right now that has hit 300. So there's more than that. I'm sorry, there's 24. But like I said, when you go down on this list, you look at Cy Young, Walter Johnson, Grover Cleveland, and Christy Matheson. All those players pitched in the early day of baseball. And you're talking about 500, 400, 373. But those players there, you got to remember one thing. They pitched almost every day. But as you look on that list, okay, I'm going to name off some players. Of course, Greg Maddux, Roger Clemens just retired recently, and everyone knows what's going on with Clemens. He's the one that's bringing a lot of this down. But, Maddux and Clemens are Maddux at 355, Clemens at 354. Then you go down Tom Keefe. But here's the names. Steve Carlton, Nolan Ryan, Don Sutton, Phil Niekro, Gaylord Perry, Tom Seaver. All that group right there in the 300s from the 60s and 70s. But as of right now, you can go further down the list. There's nobody. You got Glavine and Johnson, who are still active in the 300 game. Glavine at 305, who just got released, and Randy Johnson at 300. So can people say steroids is making these wins? I don't think so. Especially when the majority of the list, I would have, not the majority, but a big chunk of them came from the 60s, 70s, and 80 era pitchers. So where, who's next to hit 300? Okay, the only person that has an outside shot is Andy Pettitte, but he has to be consistent. But you're also talking about now that one of the fourth or fifth pitchers in the New York Yankee rotation. You move on down the list, and you have to go quite a ways down before you find anyone like Barry Zito at 125, unless he turns it around, because he's been the most healthy of all these pitchers. Unless he turns it around, you're not going to see it. You might see 250 wins. And that's going to come from someone like Bartolo Colon or someone like that. But other than that, I don't think you're going to see it. Roy Halladay, one of the most dominating pitchers in the past 5 years, he's at 140. Again, but for him to move on past that 250 mark, I just don't think will happen. Then, like I said, you go down the list and you just see people. Paul Bird, who's been pitching a while, at 108. So Roy Oswalt at 131. I don't see the durability in these pitchers to do it. And that's the other thing about durability in baseball. Grady Sizemore was one of the most active win players, and he's barely at 400, and now he's on the shelf. So again, durability in baseball, people are saying steroids are this or steroids and that. Well, you know what? I don't see it, and I think it's going to come to a time when people do say, you know what, steroids didn't do a whole lot. But, for the players that are already in the front and center of it, like Bonds and Clemens, I think it's too little too late. Anyway, my name's George. I am the Sports Super Genius. I'm from Sacramento, California. I do a lot of reporting in Omaha because that's where I'm working. But I do go back and forth. Again, tune into my podcast. I'm going to have another one coming out tomorrow. Go to iTunes at www.thesportsupergenius.com, and you'll hear another Sports Minute within the next couple days. Thanks a lot for tuning in to the Sports Super Genius Sports Minute on YouTube.
Thanks for listening to the Sports Super Genius Podcast. Hope to have you back as a listener. And want your opinion shared and get paid? Email them to george@thesportsupergenius.com.
Super Genius.